The global automobile industry, an empire built over a century on engines, fuel, and electric dreams, now trembles under the weight of a revelation that nobody saw coming, at least not this fast, and certainly not from this part of the world. The latest headlines scream with panic and disbelief as yet another self-powered car from Africa storms into the market, rewriting every single rule that automakers from Detroit to Tokyo, from Munich to Shanghai, have lived by for decades. This isn't just about competition. This feels like a tectonic shift, a disruption so profound that it might be the final nail in the coffin for an industry already scrambling to transition from combustion engines to electric vehicles. And yet, here comes something even more radical, a car that doesn't just move without gasoline, but also without charging, without plugging into the grid, and without relying on any traditional energy infrastructure. A machine that generates its own energy as it runs. When whispers of such technology first began circulating years ago, many dismissed them as pipe dreams, pseudoscience, or at best an impossible engineering fantasy. But what happens when fantasy turns into reality? When a company quietly working in Africa suddenly makes global giants look like dinosaurs? That is the reality unfolding right now, and every major automobile CEO in the world is reading these reports with a sinking feeling in their stomach because the timing could not be worse. For decades, the automotive sector has thrived on predictability. Oil powers cars, cars need fuel, fuel needs distribution, and that entire ecosystem generates trillions. Then came electric vehicles, which shook things up but still depended on charging networks, expensive lithium batteries, and power grids. It was disruptive, yes, but manageable. The giants adapted by pouring billions into EV technology, lobbying governments for subsidies, and rebranding themselves as eco-conscious pioneers. But how do you adapt when the very foundation of your energy model collapses? Because that's what's happening here. A self-powered car means no gas stations, no charging stations, no battery replacement services, no dependence on grid power, no range anxiety. It means freedom on a scale the industry never intended consumers to have. And the most shocking part? This isn't coming from Silicon Valley or Germany or Japan. It's coming from Africa, a continent often underestimated in tech innovation by Western corporations, and that underestimation is turning out to be their biggest mistake. The latest development came from a company operating out of Southern Africa, led by engineers who have spent years perfecting what they call continuous energy generation technology, or CGT. At first glance, the car looks like any modern electric vehicle: sleek, aerodynamic, smart interiors, connected features, but under the hood is where the magic lies. There is no traditional battery pack that needs overnight charging. Instead, there's a system that captures and recycles energy using principles that the company is keeping tightly under wraps, though insiders hint at advanced electromagnetic conversion and radio frequency harvesting. This is not solar power, not hydrogen, not wind. It's something different, something entirely self-sustaining. That means this car could, in theory, run for years without ever stopping for energy. Imagine driving across entire countries, across deserts, mountains, and cities, without a single refueling or charging break. The implications are staggering, not just for drivers but for entire economies. Oil-exporting nations, already nervous about the rise of EVs, now face a nightmare scenario where oil becomes practically worthless for transportation. Energy companies that spent billions building EV charging infrastructure now wonder if their investment just evaporated overnight. Governments that bet on EV subsidies and green grid upgrades must rethink everything because this technology bypasses those systems entirely.
The panic in boardroom d'Israël.
Behind closed doors in Detroit, executives at major automakers are holding emergency meetings, asking the same desperate questions. How did this happen? Why didn't we see this coming? Can we buy the tech?
Can we replicate it?
In Germany, luxury car brands that prided themselves on precision engineering are suddenly confronting the uncomfortable reality that no matter how luxurious or powerful their engines are, they can't compete with a car that never needs a drop of fuel or a moment on a charger. In Japan, companies that pioneered hybrid and electric technologies are now scrambling for answers. And in China, the EV giant of the world, where billions were invested to dominate the electric revolution, this African breakthrough feels like an ambush. All their vast charging networks, battery factories, and lithium mining deals suddenly look like relics of a past that isn't even 10 years old. Meanwhile, in Africa, the mood couldn't be more different. There is pride, excitement, and a sense of vindication. For decades, the continent was portrayed as a consumer of technology, not a producer. Now it stands at the center of a global disruption, holding a piece of innovation so powerful that it could tilt the balance of economic power. The latest car launch wasn't just a quiet announcement, it was a statement. The unveiling event, streamed online, drew millions of viewers worldwide. In the opening moments, the CEO of the company walked on stage and uttered words that will likely go down in history. The future of mobility is energy freedom. That phrase sent chills down the spines of automotive executives everywhere, because energy freedom is exactly what they never wanted. Their entire business model thrives on dependency, on customers needing to refuel, recharge, and return. A self-powered car destroys that dependency. It liberates drivers, and liberation is bad for business if your business is control. The car itself is a marvel of design and engineering. It's not some clunky prototype or science fair project. It's production-ready, with features that rival or surpass those of Tesla, Mercedes, and BMW. Advanced AI driving assistance, luxury interiors, sustainable materials, over-the-air updates, all of it is there. But the real showstopper, of course, is the energy system. During the demo, the company drove the car non-stop for over 72 hours across rugged terrain, urban streets, and highways without a single stop for charging. Journalists and engineers were invited to inspect the vehicle before and after the drive, and none could find any conventional energy input.
No charging port, no hidden fuel tank, no thing.
Just a sealed energy system that the company claims can last for decades with minimal maintenance. This revelation raises as many questions as it answers. How does it work? Is it safe? Can it scale? Skeptics argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and many are demanding independent verification. But here's the twist. This isn't the first time this company has done it. A few years ago, they unveiled a prototype that shocked the world, but back then, people dismissed it as a publicity stunt or a one-off anomaly. Now, with a production-ready model hitting the market and pre-orders already flooding in, it's impossible to ignore. Governments are taking notice too. Energy ministries, transportation regulators, and environmental agencies are scrambling to assess the implications. If millions of these cars hit the roads, entire sectors, oil, electricity, even parts of manufacturing, will be disrupted. And then there's the geopolitical angle. If Africa controls this technology, it changes the global balance of power. For centuries, resource-rich nations were exploited for raw materials. Now, an African innovation could make the world dependent on Africa for the most advanced transportation tech. That flips the script in a way that some nations will not accept quietly. Expect lobbying, legal challenges, and even covert attempts to acquire or sabotage the technology. It's the kind of innovation that triggers not just market shifts but global intrigue. Consumers, on the other hand, are ecstatic. Imagine buying a car and never paying for gas, never worrying about charging stations, never facing range anxiety. For families, that means thousands of dollars saved every year. For businesses, it means logistics costs plummet. Ride-sharing companies, delivery fleets, and public transport operators are already lining up to explore deals. And in developing countries, where fuel and electricity costs often cripple mobility, this technology could unleash economic growth like never before. Entire villages could have access to transportation without waiting for grid expansion or fuel supply chains. The ripple effects are enormous. Agriculture, education, healthcare, all benefit when mobility is cheap and accessible. Environmentalists are cautiously optimistic. If these cars truly have zero emissions and require no external energy, they could dramatically cut greenhouse gases. But some experts warn of unintended consequences. If cars last decades without energy costs, vehicle production might skyrocket, leading to other sustainability challenges like material sourcing and waste management. Still, compared to the oil-soaked reality we live in, this feels like a leap toward a cleaner future. But make no mistake, the resistance will be fierce. The global automotive industry is not just about cars, it's about ecosystems of power, both economic and political. There are trillions at stake, and entrenched players will fight tooth and nail to protect their empires. Expect lawsuits challenging patents, media campaigns sowing doubt, and regulatory hurdles designed to slow adoption. We've seen this playbook before. Every time a disruptive technology emerges, the old guard tries to kill it. Think about how the oil industry attacked renewables or how telecom giants resisted the internet. This will be no different, except the stakes are higher because transportation is the backbone of the global economy. But here's the question nobody can answer yet. Can this genie be put back in the bottle? History suggests no. Once the world sees a better way, there's no going back. Horse-drawn carriages didn't survive the automobile. Landlines didn't stop mobile phones. DVDs didn't outlast streaming. And gas-powered cars won't outlive a truly self-powered alternative. This is the dawn of a new era, and it's happening faster than anyone predicted. The automobile industry, for all its power and prestige, suddenly looks vulnerable, even obsolete. And somewhere in Africa, in a lab that defied the odds and ignored the doubters, a group of engineers just changed the world. They didn't just build a car, they built a future where energy is free, mobility is limitless, and innovation comes from places no one thought to look. For drivers everywhere, that future can't come soon enough. For the giants of the old world, it's a nightmare from which there may be no waking. The automotive world has never faced a storm like this before, and this isn't just a ripple, it's a tsunami crashing into boardrooms, dismantling business models, and rewriting the laws of the industry faster than anyone can adapt. Because as shocking as it sounds, another self-powered car from Africa has just hit the market, leaving automotive giants from Detroit to Tokyo in an unprecedented state of panic. And what makes this revelation even more earth-shattering is that this car, like its predecessor, doesn't need gasoline, doesn't need charging, doesn't need any external energy source whatsoever. And to understand why this is sending shockwaves through the corridors of power, you need to understand the fragility of the current automotive ecosystem and how this single invention threatens to dismantle a trillion-dollar empire built over a century on predictable energy dependency. Because for decades, the rules were simple: vehicles run on fuel, fuel creates demand for oil, oil keeps nations powerful, companies profitable, and consumers tied to a cycle of refueling or recharging. And even when electric vehicles emerged, bringing whispers of disruption, the giants of the industry still felt confident because EVs still depended on charging infrastructure, still needed massive lithium-ion batteries, still tied the consumer to power grids and battery replacement cycles. And that meant control remained in the hands of the few. But now imagine a world where none of that matters, where a car generates its own energy endlessly and frees itself from the shackles of refueling. A world where oil is irrelevant to mobility, where charging stations become as obsolete as phone booths. And that world is no longer imagination. It's here, and the worst fear of the automotive elite has become reality, because this isn't science fiction anymore, it's production ready, it's rolling onto the streets. And the question on everyone's mind isn't if this technology will disrupt the industry, but how fast the dominoes will fall and who will survive the collapse. Because this African innovation isn't just another product launch, it's a declaration of war on an outdated system, a shot across the bow that says energy freedom is here whether the incumbents like it or not. And behind this quiet but devastating revolution stands a team of engineers who defied every assumption, ignored every voice that said it couldn't be done, and built a car that rewrites physics as we know it. At least from the perspective of those still clinging to combustion engines and batteries like lifeboats on a sinking ship. And while corporate CEOs scramble in emergency meetings trying to make sense of this, asking if they can copy it, buy it, or bury it, the truth is this genie is out of the bottle, and there's no going back, because what the world witnessed at the unveiling event last week wasn't a flashy concept car destined to gather dust in a showroom. It was a fully functional production model with design, comfort, and performance that rivals the biggest names in the game. Yet hiding under that elegant exterior is a secret energy system that makes even Tesla look primitive. And while the company behind this miracle remains tight-lipped about the details, industry insiders whisper about advanced electromagnetic energy conversion, possibly combined with radio frequency harvesting. A process so efficient, it practically creates a closed-loop energy cycle, meaning the car sustains itself indefinitely. And to prove it wasn't smoke and mirrors, they drove this vehicle across cities, highways, and mountains for over 72 hours without a single stop, without plugging in, without any external boost. And when journalists tore it down after the run, they found no charging port, no hidden fuel tank, nothing except a sealed energy system that the company claims will run maintenance-free for decades. And that's when the panic turned into terror for the old guard, because this isn't just a product. It's an extinction event for an entire business model. Because what happens to oil when cars no longer need fuel? What happens to electric grids when cars don't need charging? What happens to trillions invested in lithium mining, battery factories, and charging stations when a self-powered car renders them irrelevant overnight? And what happens when Africa, the continent that for so long was underestimated and exploited for raw materials, suddenly holds the key to the most disruptive technology since the invention of the automobile? A technology so powerful it could flip the global balance of power on its head. And already we're seeing cracks in the system as oil-producing nations call emergency sessions to discuss how to stabilize markets if this tech scales. Because if fuel demand collapses, their economies could spiral into chaos, while automakers, from legacy giants in Europe to electric pioneers in California to battery behemoths in China, are huddling in closed-door meetings trying to figure out whether to fight, buy, or steal their way out of oblivion. And make no mistake, they will fight, because the global automotive industry is not just about machines, it's about ecosystems of money, power, and control, and when those are threatened, the old guard plays dirty. So expect lawsuits claiming patent infringements, expect media campaigns spreading fear and doubt about the safety of this technology, expect sudden regulatory hurdles under the guise of consumer protection or environmental review. But if history has taught us anything, it's that when the world sees a better way, there's no going back, because carriages couldn't stop cars, landlines couldn't stop mobiles, DVDs couldn't stop streaming, and gas-powered cars won't survive this. Because energy freedom isn't just an upgrade, it's liberation, and liberation cannot be uninvented. And that's why this story isn't just about technology, it's about power shifting from the few to the many, it's about the collapse of old monopolies and the rise of new players. It's about a future where mobility is no longer chained to fuel prices, battery shortages, or grid failures. A future where a farmer in a remote village can drive as easily as a millionaire in Manhattan because energy becomes irrelevant. And while the skeptics scream and the corporations panic, consumers are already dreaming of a world where their car never stops, never costs a dime to run, never leaves them stranded, and judging by the pre-orders flooding in from every corner of the globe, the dream is about to become reality. And as this African company ramps up production, with plans to license the tech across continents, the question isn't whether the industry will change, it's how fast and who will survive the reckoning. Because this isn't just the future of cars, it's the future of energy, the future of freedom, and it's happening now, faster than anyone imagined. And if you think the giants of Detroit, Tokyo, and Munich are going down without a fight, think again, because behind closed doors, plans are already being drawn, alliances formed, and perhaps even sabotage considered. Because when trillions are at stake, ethics become optional, and make no mistake, this battle won't just be fought in showrooms. It'll be fought in courtrooms, boardrooms, and maybe even backrooms, but no matter how bloody the fight gets, one thing is clear: the world has tasted the idea of a car that powers itself, and once you taste freedom, you don't go back, and that, more than anything, is why the automobile industry as we know it is in panic, because the old world is dying, and the new one isn't waiting for permission. It's already here, rolling silently down the streets, unstoppable, untouchable, and powered by nothing but the brilliance of those who dared to believe the impossible could be done.